But what happens if Caitlin Clark decides that she no longer wants to play in the WNBA?
The basketball world is reeling, and the question on everyone's lips is devastating. Has the WNBA's golden girl, Caitlin Clark, been pushed to her breaking point? The whispers are growing louder, the evidence is mounting, and the treatment she's endured is nothing short of shocking. This is the story the WNBA doesn't want you to hear. This is the dark side of professional women's basketball that's been hidden behind highlight reels and corporate sponsorships. We're exposing the truth about how the league's biggest star has been systematically targeted, brutalized, and betrayed by the very organization she single-handedly elevated to unprecedented heights.
When Caitlin would get bullied, nobody would do nothing.
That's right.
Nobody would do nothing. It was like, hey, they didn't know, like, whoa, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe people are doing this to Caitlin Clark. Teammates weren't jumping in there.
From the moment Caitlin Clark stepped onto a WNBA court, she didn't just bring her legendary shooting skills, she brought millions of fans, record-breaking viewership, and a level of excitement this league had never seen before. But what did she get in return? A target on her back so large, it's visible from space. The numbers don't lie, and they're absolutely staggering. Caitlin Clark single-handedly transformed the Indiana Fever from afterthoughts to appointment television. Her rookie season didn't just boost attendance, it exploded viewership to levels the WNBA had only dreamed of achieving. Indiana's games averaged 1.18 million viewers compared to just 394,000 for all other WNBA games. That's not just improvement, that's a complete transformation of an entire league's relevance. The attendance numbers are equally mind-blowing. After averaging just 4,000 fans at home games the previous summer, the Fever shot up to over 17,000 per game in 2024. Their regular season finale against Washington broke the WNBA attendance record with 20,711 fans, the highest attendance for a WNBA game in 17 years. Her final playoff game as a rookie averaged 2.5 million viewers, making it the most-watched WNBA game on cable television in history.
The truth is, the success of this expansion, hell, the success of the WNBA, it is 100% reliant on Caitlin Clark.
But here's where the story takes a sinister turn. Instead of being celebrated, instead of being protected, Caitlin Clark became the target of what can only be described as systematic harassment on the basketball court. And the most heartbreaking part, much of it has been endorsed, enabled, and even celebrated by the very players who should have been welcoming her into their sisterhood. The incidents are numerous, and each one more disturbing than the last. Let's start with the Connecticut Sun game that shocked the basketball world. Picture this. Caitlin Clark, moving with the ball, gets caught in the eye by J.C. Sheldon. Already injured, already vulnerable, Clark gives a light push in retaliation, and then it happens. Marina Mabrey, in a move so shocking it defied belief, shoved Caitlin Clark to the ground in what can only be described as a deliberate act of aggression. The WNBA's response? Initially nothing.
So Caitlin Clark gets poked in the eye. Marina Mabrey doesn't even see what happens, and she just decides to clean Caitlin Clark out of it. And the referees just said, nah, it was not worth an injection.
The referees failed to eject Mabrey. The league sat silent while their biggest star was literally knocked to the floor on national television. It took public outrage and media pressure before the WNBA finally admitted the obvious, that the referees were wrong and handed out punishment that many believe was far too little, far too late. But this wasn't an isolated incident. Oh no, this was part of a disturbing pattern that has followed Caitlin Clark throughout her professional career. The physical targeting, the cheap shots, the flagrant fouls that somehow get overlooked or under-penalized by officials who seem determined to let opposing players welcome the rookie in the most brutal way possible. The media impact extends far beyond just one network. NBA TV experienced a staggering 346% growth in viewership, averaging 241,000 viewers per WNBA game in 2024 compared to just 46,000 the year before. CBS had its highest-rated WNBA games in 23 years. The 2024 WNBA All-Star Game, featuring Clark's debut, shattered all-time ratings records, while the overall playoffs saw more than 54 million unique viewers across various networks and platforms.
Before the 2023 season, the WNBA had grown by 40% viewership from 2022 to 2023. But with Caitlin Clark's arrival, it's grown by 400% viewership. What that means is if the WNBA were continue to grow at the rate it grew from 22 to 23, it would take until 2028 to do what Caitlin Clark did this year.
Even the merchandise numbers tell the story of Clark's unprecedented impact. Jersey sales increased by 3,000%. And you can guess which players Jersey fans were buying. This wasn't just a bump in popularity. This was a complete revolution in how America views women's professional basketball. But despite these record-breaking achievements, ESPN's Dick Vitale didn't mince words when he called the WNBA players' treatment of Clark absurd. This came after fellow players ranked her as only the 9th best All-Star guard, a ranking so laughably disconnected from reality that it exposed the bitter jealousy and resentment that has poisoned the well of professional women's basketball.
Well, the WNBA is culpable in some of this.
Totally culpable.
Because yesterday, I think they upgraded one of the fouls to a flagrant 2, which brought a fine with it.
And let's address the elephant in the room, the racial dynamics that have been weaponized against Caitlin Clark. Critics have used her success as a white player in a predominantly black league to create division where there should have been unity. Instead of celebrating the diversity of talent and the universal appeal of great basketball, some have turned Clark's popularity into a racial battleground, making her success somehow problematic rather than inspirational. The recent injury situation tells an even more troubling story. Clark was forced to withdraw from the All-Star Game festivities due to a groin injury, an injury that many believe was exacerbated by the constant physical targeting she's endured throughout the season.
And this year it has been quad injury, and then another quad injury, and then a groin injury, and now what seems to be another groin injury.
Her statement was heartbreaking. I am incredibly sad and disappointed to say I can't participate in the three-point contest or the All-Star Game.
She starts crying, and I've honestly never seen Caitlin Clark cry on the court except when she lost the national championship game. She keeps it together no matter what is happening.
Here's a player who lived for competition, who thrived on the biggest stages, forced to sit out the league's marquee event because her body couldn't handle the accumulated damage from months of being targeted. It's not just disappointing. It's devastating for a league that desperately needs its biggest star healthy and competing. The officiating problems surrounding Clark's games have become a legitimate scandal. Time and again, referees have failed to protect the league's most valuable player. Flagrant fouls have been ignored, obvious targeting has gone uncalled, and the message sent to opposing teams has been clear: open season on Caitlin Clark.
Many WNBA fans are calling out the referee problem, and they are demanding answers and they are demanding changes.
The growing push for Clark to leave the WNBA isn't coming from random internet trolls. It's coming from fans who are genuinely concerned about her well-being, her safety, and her future in a league that seems determined to destroy rather than protect its greatest asset. These aren't casual observers. These are people who have watched every game, seen every cheap shot, witnessed every slight, and concluded that the WNBA doesn't deserve Caitlin Clark. The irony is absolutely crushing. European leagues are reportedly ready to offer Clark significantly more money, better treatment, and the respect she's been denied in her home country. While she remains contractually tied to the Indiana Fever through a 4-year deal, the speculation about her potentially exploring international opportunities continues to grow. Imagine the devastating blow to the WNBA if their biggest star, the player who rescued the league from obscurity, decided she'd had enough of the mistreatment, the targeting, and the lack of protection. The television ratings would crater, the attendance would plummet, and the momentum Clark built would vanish overnight. The league's handling of the Clark situation represents one of the greatest mismanagement disasters in sports history. Instead of building around their transcendent talent, instead of creating a protective environment for their most valuable asset, the WNBA has allowed petty jealousies and personal vendettas to threaten the very foundation of their newfound success. Clark's journey from college superstar to professional target is a cautionary tale about how success can breed resentment and how talent can become a liability when surrounded by the wrong people with the wrong attitudes. Every cheap shot she's absorbed, every slight she's endured, every moment of protection she's been denied has chipped away at what should have been a celebration of basketball excellence. The most tragic part of this entire saga is that Caitlin Clark has handled the mistreatment with a grace and professionalism that her tormentors don't deserve. She's continued to play at an elite level, continued to draw fans, continued to elevate the profile of women's basketball, even as her own peers and league officials have failed to show her the most basic respect and protection.
Yeah, it's definitely upsetting. I don't think nobody in our league should be facing any sort of racism, hurtful, disrespectful, hateful comments and threats. Those aren't fans, those are trolls, and it's a real disservice to the people in our league, the organization.
Her recent comments about feeling thankful for the relationships I've built and the opportunities that I've had reveal a maturity that stands in stark contrast to the petty behavior she's faced. But there's also a weariness in her voice, a recognition that perhaps the environment she hoped to thrive in isn't as welcoming as she expected. The question now isn't whether Caitlin Clark deserves better. That's obvious to anyone with eyes. The question is whether the WNBA will wake up before it's too late, before they lose the player who single-handedly transformed their league from niche sport to mainstream entertainment. Every day that passes without meaningful change, without real protection, without genuine respect for what Clark has accomplished, is another day closer to losing basketball's brightest star to a league that actually appreciates greatness rather than punishes it. The clock is ticking, the patience is running thin, and the basketball world is watching to see whether the WNBA will choose to protect its golden goose or continue the systematic campaign of mistreatment that threatens to drive away the very player who saved their league from irrelevance. The next chapter in this story will determine not just Caitlin Clark's future, but the future of professional women's basketball itself. Will they recognize the treasure they have and finally provide the respect and protection she deserves? Or will they continue down this destructive path until their brightest star decides she's had enough and takes her talents somewhere they'll be properly valued? The entire basketball world is holding its breath, waiting to see how this unprecedented situation resolves itself. One thing is certain, the WNBA's treatment of Caitlin Clark will be remembered as either their greatest success story or their most devastating failure. Right now, it's trending toward the latter, and that should terrify everyone who cares about the future of women's professional basketball. The mistreatment must end. The protection must begin. And if it doesn't happen soon, the WNBA might just lose the player who could have been their Michael Jordan, not to retirement, not to injury, but to their own inexcusable failure to recognize and protect greatness when it was right in front of them. Should Caitlin Clark leave the WNBA? Share your thoughts in the comments below.